Are you in business or busyness? Welcome to Standing on Business with Dr. Melissa, the Purpose Profitess. This is a bold, unfiltered journey for entrepreneurs, visionaries, and purpose-driven go-getters who are ready to stop performing and start becoming. Each week, I take you beyond the hustle and into the heart with soul-stirring truths, powerful strategies, and real conversations that uncover what it means to be the CEO of your own life. So, if you're done chasing paper and ready to activate purpose, tune in, tap in, and take your place at the table. This is Standing on Business. And this time, it's personal. Well, hello there, soulmates. Once again, it's your girl, Dr. Melissa, back with another soul-stirring episode of Standing on Business, where it's not just business, it's personal. So I have a question for you. Let me ask you, have any of you ever looked at your life and thought, I'm doing everything I'm supposed to be doing, but something still feels off, right? Not wrong, not necessarily broken, just off, like sort of misaligned. And the truth is, you're showing up. You're being responsible. You're being very, very productive. But even in the midst of all of that, something just feels muted. Something feels restrained. Something feels like you're yourself, but not fully. Am I talking to anybody out there? I want to tell you that if you've ever had that experience, if you've ever felt even an inkling of that, I need you to stay with me today. You're going to want to stay with me today because what I've learned through my own life, through loss, through rebuilding, is that many of us are not living from our true identity. There's that identity word again that I told you we would be talking about over and over again, because I really do believe it's the hallmark. I believe it's the secret jam that we need in order to live a purpose-filled and purposeful life. Here's the thing, when we're not living from true identity, the sad truth is we're living with a mask. And now I don't mean the kind that we wore during COVID. I'm talking about that invisible mask that most people don't even realize that you have on. And now I'm going to tell you, oftentimes when I talk to people about having a mask on, I get a little bit of pushback, right? Because people are like, whoa, because mask almost sounds like fake, like you're being fake. But here's what I want to submit to you today, soulmates. And I just want you to rock with me and just stay with me. Don't get in your feels. Just stay with me. Most people don't put on a mask consciously. We don't put on a mask from a very conscious level. Let me hide who I am. I'm going to tell you that most of the time we put on a mask to survive. I mean, it's like an analogy that I could use is that you go into this room and all of a sudden it's filled with gas, poisonous, dangerous gas. And you put that mask on to survive. Or you're on that plane and you hear that stewardess say, hey, we're having problems. And Lord knows, y'all know, I hate to even say that out loud because many of you know that I've always had this fear of flying. So I don't even like to verbalize any problems with planes. But for the purpose of your breakthrough and your analogy, I'll go there. Like you hear that flight attendant said, put your mask on. And so you're not wearing the mask out of a sense of trying to hide consciously. You're wearing it to survive. And so from that standpoint, I want to know if you're listening to me. I want you to consciously notice what might be coming up for you right now. what is stirring in you right now? And if something is resonating with you, if you feel something rising up, I want you to drop it in the comments below. Because I'm going to tell you that sometimes naming it is the very first step to releasing it. So today I want to talk to you about 3 signs that you might just be wearing a mask and don't even know it. Let me start here. I was never a quiet child. I know that shocks you. Some of you are like, what? No, Dr. Melissa, I was never a quiet child. In fact, my nickname was Motor Mouth. And it wasn't a nickname that I enjoyed or liked, but it was a nickname that I had. I was a very curious child. I was very talkative. I was always asking questions, just one of those kids and I would ask deep questions. Like people would be like, Lord, honey, how old are you? And why are you so deep? But I was observant. And so I would notice things and if I didn't understand it, I would think that a good thing for me to do would be to ask a question. Now, depending on the environment I was in, that curiosity that I had was either celebrated or corrected. And I'm thinking about that even now, just the juxtaposition of those two things. Because growing up, I lived a life of duality. I lived between two worlds. During the week, life with my mom and my 2 younger sisters was marked by poverty, instability, lack, and a lot of stress. But then on the weekends, I was able to step into a very different world with my dad and my grandparents. And this world looked like structure and predictability and comfort. Like my grandmother literally used to iron the bed sheets. So when I say comfort, yes, it was that good grandma comfort that you get, right? Comfort food, a comfortable environment, a lot of praise, all of that. I was the best thing since sliced bread in my grandparents' house. So what does that do? Early on, I learned something that would shape my life for many, many years. I learned that my voice landed differently depending on where I was. Like in some spaces, my questions were welcomed. My grandfather loved it. He was a very intellectual man himself, not formal education, but one of the smartest people that even to this day that I've ever met. And he loved my curiosity. And he loved that I questioned things and that I needed to understand things. And so when I would ask questions, he would compliment me and he would say, he called me Liz instead of Melissa. He would say, Liz, that's a very good question. I'm very proud that you are asking questions, that you're not just some person that just take what people say and run with it. So questions were seen as intelligent. But now, in other spaces, my questions were seen as a disruption. It was seen as disrespect. It was seen as arrogance. I would ask questions and I was the little girl who was trying to be too smart. Or back in the country, they would say being grown. You're trying to be too grown. Children were seen and not heard. And I was always asking questions. So when I would ask my questions, it was an interruption. It was a disruption. What I learned later on, it was seen as offensively because it was as if I was questioning the status quo. And so people had their own uncomfortable feelings about how life was. And me asking questions, I think, was perceived as me judging. And that wasn't my intent. So let me tell you what happened with that. I didn't lose my voice, soulmates, but I absolutely learned to manage it. Like I learned when to speak up and when to shrink. I learned when to be impressive and when to be expressive. And then I learned when to just blend in. And let me tell you, that's not being fake. That's not deception. That was adaptation. That was me learning how to adapt. And I'm going to tell you that when you adapt so long, when you practice adaptation so long, it becomes identity. And soulmates, that's the place where masks are born. That's where the mask was created. So, let me give you the first sign that you may be wearing a mask and you don't know it. Sign number one, you change who you are based on the room. So, in other words, you're not the same version of yourself everywhere. And not because you're being fake, not because you're complex. It's because you're cautious. With this first sign, you actually learn to read the room before you speak. I'm going to tell you, I learned to read the room before I could read a book. Read the environment before I knew how to, literally read. So, how does this look? You walk into a room, you read the room, you adjust your tone, you adjust your truth, and you adjust your personality depending on who's present. Now, I'm going to keep saying this. You're not lying. You're not trying to be fake, but you are editing yourself. And here's where the excuses get real cute and sexy. Some of us call it maturity. We'll say, oh, no, I'm not. What I'm doing is maturity says that there's a time and place for everything. We'll get biblical on that stuff too. We're like, no, I didn't speak up because there's a time to speak and there's a time to be quiet. And my maturity lets me know that in certain rooms, in certain environments, and around certain people, I need to edit myself out of a sense of nobility for them. Nah. Let me say this very gently and with love. There's a difference between wisdom and self-erasure. There's a difference between wisdom and withering. And I'm going to tell you, if every room requires a different version of you, my loves, eventually you'll forget which version of yourself is real. And I'm going to tell you, if you're feeling this right now, if something is rising up for you, I want you to know that you are not alone. This is actually one of the very first things that I work through with my coaching clients. Many of my coaching clients, high-performing women. So for most of them, it's really helping them to recognize where they learn to shrink and why. Because you can't fix what you don't recognize. And so awareness, self-awareness is oftentimes the doorway, right? So before you can get into the room of abundance, we got to get you on the porch and through the door. So I'm going to tell you that self-awareness is oftentimes the doorway. So if this sign number one sort of hits you in the gut and it feels like uncomfortable, please know you are not alone. Because here's a sister right here that I'm telling you, I'm walking with you all the way. I've got my boots on and I'm walking with you. So let's go to sign number two. What is the second sign, number two, that you might be wearing a mask? Sign number two is you're known for being strong, but you are rarely seen, or at least you don't feel seen. Sign number two is all about people know what you can handle, but they don't know what you actually feel. And you're cognizant of that. You are super aware that people have no clue about how you actually feel. Because you are the strong one. You are the dependable one. You are the one that everybody calls when things fall apart. And soulmates, let me tell you, I know this mask intimately. I feel like I created this mask. Okay. I know I didn't, but I feel like I did. I can recall the time when my late husband was diagnosed with brain cancer. When that happened, I became the caretaker, I became the advocate, I became the organizer, I became the protector. And I can tell you, even when I think back to this now, the crazy thing is, most people in our lives didn't even know he was sick. And that was by his request. He didn't want people to know. So I want you to imagine having that kind of trauma happening in your life and not being able to tell people. So what did I do? I carried that grief silently, even from him, because I couldn't look too worried. I was like, hey, it's good and everything's going to be okay and we're on it and I'm praying and let's have faith and I'm standing on this and I'm believing. So I carried that grief silently, even within the context of my own inner circle. But I also carried that fear quietly. When I think about that, it's it's unimaginable. Like when I think about it now in hindsight, I'm like, oh my goodness. I'm going to tell you from the outside, I looked like Superwoman. I mean, I was constantly being complimented for my strength from the very few people. And when I say few people, I'm talking about only our children, my sister, and two friends knew. Like not even his parents, not his family. No one knew. Our children, my sister, and two very close friends. So I'm looking like Superwoman, but inside, I was disappearing. So what was my mask? Strength became my mask. I am strong. And somebody out there knows what I'm talking about. But here's the danger of that particular mask. When people only know your strength, they don't know how to support your humanity. Some of you who are listening to me, you have mastered being capable. You have mastered being strong. But you might be starving just to be held. And I know that was certainly true of me. But my mask of strength did not even allow people to hold me in that need. Because for some of them, they weren't even aware. All they saw was the mask of strength. And so, if this is hidden close to home for you, I just want you to type strength in the comments. You don't have to explain it. I just want you, like I said, sometimes the act of putting it into words, the action of saying that's me, acknowledgement is so powerful. Now I'm going to tell you, at some point in time with this mask of strength, I remember when I shifted. I remember when I shifted. And the realization that happened in that shift changed everything for me. What I realized, soulmates, was that the mask helped me survive. I'm telling you, I don't know if I would have survived that time without having that mask. So the mask was important at that time. It helped me to survive. But the very thing that helped me to survive in one season was killing out my next season, because I realized that mask could not help me become. And in the moment when I stopped asking, how do I keep this all together? And I started asking myself, who am I really? Like this, I know I'm this superwoman and everybody sees me as this, I'm not even human. I'm this superhuman. When I started to say, but who am I really? Everything began to change. And it was in that moment where that mask started cracking. And I'm telling you, if you're in that moment now where your mask is cracking under the pressure, I want you to hear me loud and clear. You are not breaking. And I know it feels like that. When the mask begins to crack, we panic because it's like, oh my goodness. But you're not breaking, my loves. You are becoming. And that's a beautiful thing. Remember, I said, we don't want the breaking, but we want the breakthrough. And the breakthrough can only come from the breaking. So, sign number three that you might be wearing a mask and you don't even know it. And this one is a little tricky. It is that your life looks right, but it feels misaligned. Like your life makes sense on paper, but not in your spirit. Like externally, everything is like, yes. This is like for the woman or man out there that like you've got the picket fence, you've got you got all the things. People are looking and they're like, oh, she's got it going on. He's got it going on. So everything makes sense on paper. But in your spirit, something is off. So with this sign, you did what you were supposed to do. You followed the plan. You checked the boxes. You raised the babies. You stood firm as a wife. You helped build the company. You showed up on time. You did all of the things. But something feels disconnected. And what I want you to know is that there's nothing wrong. This is not failure. Things are not falling apart. This is where your identity is just calling you forward. Because I need you to understand that purpose, this purpose that we're all seeking, it doesn't start with doing more. It actually starts with being honest about who you are. I'll say it again and I'll keep saying it as long as I have breath to talk. This is not about doing, it's about being. You are not a human doing, or at least you weren't supposed to be. You weren't created to be a human doing. We were created to be human beings, which means our be is more important than our do. And every day, this is the work that I do. This is my call, helping people reconnect to who they are beyond the roles and the expectations and the masks. It's my calling. So when I talk about purpose for you, and when I talk about identity for you, I want you to understand that I am absolutely your sister, your chick, who's on that same path. And that's the very reason why I created a space, a supported space for us to explore that. And I'll talk about that. I'll drop the link and I'll talk about that in a moment because it's really a place where we can talk about this openly. So here's my question for you. And I want you to really sit with this. What version of you has been running your life? And which one is actually ready to take the lead? What version has been in the driver's seat and that you know does not need to be driving? And what version of you is in the back seat that you need to bring to the forefront? Because here's the truth that I want you to leave here today. This discussion, I want you to leave here with this. You didn't wear the mask. If you identified yourself and go, oh my gosh, based on those three signs, there are some areas in my life where I am masked. And I'm going to tell you, I promise you, you're not alone. But you didn't wear that mask because you were fake. You wore that mask because you were faithful to survival. And I'm going to tell you, when you're in survival mode, we do whatever we need to do to survive, and we should. If you're in the ocean and you're going down, that's not the time. That's not the time to look cute. That's the time to make it do what it do and to survive. And so I honor our resilience to survive, our ability to make it through some tough things. And you did it. You were faithful to survival. But now it's time to be faithful to yourself. And that's today's mantra. I want you to write it down. I want you to sit with it. I want you to let it marinate, let it resonate. And I want you to repeat it. You were faithful to survival, and now it's time to be faithful to yourself. And if something in this episode stirred in you, if you felt seen or challenged, gently challenged, or even affirmed, I want to invite you to leave a comment below or DM me on Facebook and Instagram, and I'll give you information. The links will be below where you can do that. Why? Because it's important to me. It affirms me for us to be having this discussion and for me to know that it resonated with you. It blesses me. And so please, if something struck you, please leave me a comment or DM me. Please, I read them all. DM me on Facebook or Instagram. No pressure, no pitch, just conversation, connection, and growth. Because, listen, the mask, it did its job, but it doesn't get to lead your life anymore. Because the truth is, my queen or my king, your throne is waiting. Not the chair that you sit in, but the authority that you walk in. So I want to thank you so much for tuning in to Standing on Business with Dr. Melissa. I hope that today's discussion has ignited a fire within you to embrace your authenticity, prioritize your purpose, and become the CEO of your own life. And listen, you don't have to walk this out alone. I've built a space for women and a few good men just like you. Women who are ready to move in faith, even when they are still in the middle of figuring it all out. And that space is called Women with Purpose, Power, and Profits. It's my free Facebook community where you're going to find strategy and encouragement. It's a place where women come to be sharpened, supported, and most of all, seen. Inside there, we talk about purpose, profits, and power, not as buzzwords, but as a blueprint. So you can search Women with Purpose, Power, and Profits on Facebook, or use the link that you'll find in the show notes. I cannot wait to see you and support you there. And of course, if you want more information about me, please visit the website and subscribe to the YouTube channels and follow me on all of the socials. So join me next time as we dive deeper into the strategies and mindset shifts that are needed to build a purpose-driven life. I want you to remember that you are purposeful and you are powerful. I truly believe in you, and I cannot wait to see and to hear about the incredible things that you're going to achieve. So until next time, keep standing up, keep standing out, and yes, please keep standing on business. Bye for now.